Under a shroud of darkness, a small car tried to get home, but there was a roadblock. I got out, wondering what was going on, 2 friends in tow, and found out the 2 police cars were abandoned, the flickering lights having faded into an eerie glow. Something was very wrong. I pushed the ball of panic out of my mind and noticed the cars trying to squeeze past, the headlights a haunting glow in the inky black that surrounded us. I'd never seen such a dark night, as if there were no lights anywhere, no stars overhead, no moon to speak of. We found ourselves at an abandoned ship at the docks, and with just one look, I knew the nightmare had just begun. The corroded steel walls seemed to pulse as though alive. I walked ahead of my friends and a few others who decided to join us. My footsteps were careful along the blood-soaked deck, and I knew if I peered too closely, I knew that within that sticky red essence, things would start to breathe. Strange sounds seemed to echo through the steel walls, the terrified screams of people trapped somewhere else in the ship. We'd heard one wail of sheer terror. A strange roar followed it, a horrible thump that almost shook the walls, only to be left with silence. Something was hunting, and it was getting closer. I could feel the fine hairs along the back of my neck bristle and stand on end, as if it knew exactly where we were, because I could almost feel it breathing in my head. My body tensed. My nerve endings thrummed with panic when I brought everyone into a larger room and made sure the steel door we came through was locked down tight, a few heavy obstacles placed against it for extra support. They all looked at me with questioning eyes, but I could only tell them what they already knew. Something was loose on the ship, and we had to find a way to kill it. What I couldn't tell them was that it knew me. It had followed us from that inky blackness that had fallen over the city and was going to kill and devour everything in its path until it had me in its jaws. Sweat began to form like tiny dewdrops along my skin as I tried to focus on getting everyone out alive. A young man had taken it on himself to stay at my side when I ventured away from the group toward an adjoining room on the other side, and felt my chest tighten. It was sleeping quarters. Everything was turned over, sheets bloody and torn, shredded. The bunks that were once bolted to the ceiling and floor had been bent in such a way I had no idea how they were even still standing. A small voice found its way to my ears, the frightened whisper of a young girl. We found her hidden beneath a pile of blankets, her dark eyes wide with fear. She kept repeating herself, sobbing as she spoke.
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to.
Another friend heard the sounds and on instinct cradled the girl protectively in her arms. She was about to ask the girl why she was saying that when my mind was suddenly filled with an image. My voice was low as I felt my entire body go into shock. She found an animal, no bigger than this pillow. I paused to motion to the shredded pillow at my feet, and it started growing rapidly. I felt haunted, unable to add the vision that had swelled through my brain. "What is it?" she asked in a strained voice as I clenched my fists. "Aaron, you gotta talk to me. What do you see?" I brought my gaze to her, unable to hide the cold look in my eyes when I found my voice. The little girl's new pet became a beast. I stopped to take a silent breath, and it's looking for its next meal. We gotta get these people out of here. Her skin went pale at the lack of emotion in my words. "Let me guess. You're not coming," she stated softly, not wanting to frighten the child further. My eyes held deep apologies as I replied. Someone's gotta kill this thing, and it seems to be targeting me. If we can find a safe escape route for you and the others, you're gonna take it. She cut me off. You'll go play bait? God damn it, Aaron. This is suicide. Her voice was heightened just slightly, but I could feel her anger. It won't kill me, I lied, and gave her a tired smile. It thinks this is a game of hide and seek. The young man in the room finally spoke up, more like cat and mouse. Our eyes went to him as he took a step toward us. I wouldn't let them change my mind. Enough. Get everyone together so I can get you guys the hell out of here, I announced in a low tone and received a glare from her as she held the little girl. No arguing. Move. Time went by quickly as we found a map and were able to coordinate the fastest escape route. There were a few low complaints, especially from the men in the group, but I shut them down before they could even try any heroics. Everything started out so smoothly. They were less panicked and more focused as the last person crossed the door. I watched them as they squeezed through the corridors for as long as I could. But when they hit that third door, a terrible crash echoed from behind me. Without hesitation, I closed and secured the door, only to spin around and watched as that barricade shivered. It was on the other side. My heart thundered in my chest as I fought to breathe, my entire body engulfed in adrenaline as I tried to push back the mind-numbing fear of the thing that was trying to get to me. I didn't wait to watch as that steel door began to groan in protest as the creature continued to slam itself against it. My body moved before my mind could catch up. On autopilot, I sprinted over to another room, hidden behind a dresser that had been thrown just hours ago. The others had no idea it was there. I managed to push the heavy thing out of my way. It teetered over and fell to the deck with a resounding crack. I ignored it and opened the door. Inside the small room was exactly what I'd been looking for. I wasn't sure exactly how to use it, but I knew enough about its design to sling the strap over my shoulder, so that it hung against my chest, leaving me room for more weapons. I knew everything I was grabbing was already prepped and loaded, so all I had to do was click the safety off. My last resort seemed to shimmer at me as it caught my eye. And strangely enough, a crooked smile danced across my lips as I lifted it by the handle and peered at its deadly, razor-sharp edge. Something exploded behind me. I spun around and watched as the creature wriggled its pulsing mass through the hole it had created, the frame having been torn away by incredibly powerful claws that stuck out like butcher's knives from its webbed hands as it began to pull itself in a grotesque fashion along the deck toward me. I tried to focus on the blood rushing through my ears, hoping it would drown out the sound of its long body dragging like a wet piece of meat along jagged concrete. That's when its stench hit me. I swallowed back the bile that burned a path of fire down my throat at the sickly sweet aroma of death and horror. I readied my hands, body tense as bulbous, murky yellow eyes stared hungrily at my face. I took a steadying breath as its massive jaws unhinged, rusted-colored saliva dripping down its green jowls as a forked tongue snaked out between the front row of its needle-like teeth. Its jaws were large enough to engulf half of a smart car. If that ugly son of a bitch got too close, I'd be dead. I waited as it continued its slow, wet movements across the room. I could see it had no back legs, just a thick, pulsing body that stretched out into a whip-like tail, hooked barbs at its deadly edge. It was the same color and consistency as the throbbing abdomen of a queen termite. With a quiet breath, I held it in my lungs when it reared its upper body into the air and let out a roar. The sound was deafening against my ears, but it was the moment I'd been waiting for. An eruption of red-hot flames jutted out of the end of my high-powered flamethrower, encasing that terrible mass in a blanket of scalding waves. A high-pitched scream bellowed from those killing jaws as its throbbing flesh began to sizzle and turn black. It thrashed wildly under the searing heat, trying in desperation to get out of the flames. I held on, sweating from the heat that began to swirl off the flamethrower, small streams of steam lifting in spirals from my body as I held it in a death grip in my hands. Bits and pieces of flesh began to break off and fell in sizzling wet slops as the creature began to back away. I took that opportunity to save what was left of the hellfire and brought the double-barrel 12-gauge into my arms. Placed snugly against my right shoulder, I braced myself for the kick and let off the first shot. The spray blew a basketball-sized hole just on the left of its throbbing throat, causing the creature to jerk back with a gurgled roar. But I didn't stop. As the creature squirmed to get back up, I reloaded and let off another round. My shoulder began to strain until I had no more ammo left, and the goddamn thing was still alive. I dropped the gauge and replaced it with 2 flare guns. The creature's eyes were beginning to glow a strange pea soup green, sizzling from the flames, huge holes riddling its upper body where I knew I hit vital organs. But it kept coming. I squeezed and let the blinding flares embed themselves into the creature's gaping jaws. One found its way to the back of its throat, while the other hit just beneath its left eye, blinding it. I wanted to get the hell out of there. Every fiber of my being screamed to run. But I remained rigid, waiting for the opportunity to end this, once and for all. White smoke billowed as it threw its head back, a loud sizzling encasing its gargled moans of agony. I saw that window and took it. I took a few steps forward, not too many. This thing had a hell of a reach, and emptied the flamethrower. The screams were endless, bouncing off the steel walls like a morbid opera. A ringing filled my ears as my eardrums pulsed with small waves of pain. If I didn't silence the creature soon, I'd go deaf. The end of the barrel sputtered, telling me I had little time to finish what I'd started. I removed the weapon and dropped it to the floor and was left with my last resort. The creature had finally stopped screaming, but instead was making horrible mewling sounds as it fell limply onto its right side. Smoke rose from its scorched flesh. Its left eye had burst into a gaping hole of black tissue, which meant it would be blind to an attack. I had to be careful. If I moved too slowly, who knows if it would have enough strength left to whip around and bite me in half. So I improvised. The closest thing I could find was an unused can of cooking lard, which would have been funny at any other time. Instead, I chucked it just a foot in front of the creature, hoping it would go for the bait. The distraction worked like a charm. I ran up and wielded the machete like a battle axe. With a mighty 2-handed swing, I swung the deadly blade over my head and, using my momentum, swept it down hard into the creature's neck. I was expecting a jolt to travel through my body on impact, but found, with a shocked disgust, that it ripped through the creature like butter. There was no resistance when I pulled the blade out and began hacking away. Panting, I stood 5 feet back, gazing at my masterpiece as sweat dripped down into my eyes. I hadn't just severed the mangled head from the creature, but made a point to tear the rest of its rotting flesh apart. I even went so far as to drag the oozing head from one side of the room to the other. You can never be too sure. What was once a terrible monster was now no more than bits and pieces of a bad dream. I held the handle of the machete in a white-knuckled grip and went for the exit, my body beginning to ache as the adrenaline started to wear off. I don't know how I made it out. My memory's a little fuzzy. But when I emerged into that cool night air, I took a deep breath and closed my eyes. I'd made it. Even though I was covered in gunk I would never have a scientific name for. I knew it was gross and I smelled like a corpse. As I thought about a hot shower, I opened my eyes and felt my blood run cold. There were more of them, spilling out onto the docks from the dark waters. I tried to stop my mind from snapping as I noticed the scattered and torn remains of my friends strewn out for several feet. Except for one thing. The little girl with a ghost pale skin, black hair, and cold black eyes was standing just across from me. The creature standing in a semicircle behind her as if waiting. Our gaze locked, and I could finally see the truth. She needed to die. And then I woke up to the sound of rain pattering against the door and jumped from my bed, my bladder needing release. A hell of a way to start my day, huh? So, that's what I wrote. That was my dream. Tell me, what movie does it remind you of? Or movies? And if you enjoyed this, let me know in the comments below. Give this video a like, and maybe I'll share more of my strange dreams. And on that note, my lovelies, thank you so very much for watching. If you enjoy this new style of video, let me know. And I'll see thee anon. Adieu.